Comic Book Savant, episode 468. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode is going to be a TV talk episode where I'm going to talk about a cartoon or animated series that I really enjoyed called Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, if I can talk. I've talked about this animated series a few times over the course of the recent years, because it had really been on my mind. I hadn't watched it since it originally aired back in the 2010 to 2012 is when it originally aired on TV. And I had thought about it a lot. I was considering buying it, and right before Disney Plus was about to roll out, they announced the shows that were going to be on there. And I found out that it was going to be made available both seasons on Disney Plus, which I thought was great because it saved me about $50. Because when I found it on iTunes, it was about $25 per season for the 2 seasons. So I thought that was a cool deal with my subscription to Disney Plus. I could go back and watch it. So one of the first things I binged on Disney Plus when it launched at the end of last year was this series. Any free moment I had, I went back and watched the previous 2 seasons. If you're not familiar with Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, before it was actually, and the reason why it ended was due to the acquisition of Disney acquiring Marvel. It was the Marvel's Avengers cartoon that was on. I'm trying to remember what network it was on. I want to say it was on Disney, airing on Disney at the time, Disney XD, if I remember correctly. Or maybe it was on a Cartoon Network. I can't remember which one it was. Then, like with all of the cartoons, this was a casualty of when Disney acquired it. Another really great series that I'll spotlight at some point, or I think I did a couple years ago, Spectacular Spider-Man. I did. I actually reviewed that. I can't remember off the top of my head what episode it was, but I will link it in this episode's notes. I'll link to that review of Spectacular Spider-Man, great animated series that was out at the same time that kind of all of the animated series at the time were ended, and then they were relaunched later as far as Disney and Disney Marvel. The acquisition happened. They launched their own animated series, but both were really great ones. This had a great cast of veteran voice actors, across the board. You have names like Eric Loomis. You have Fred. I hope I pronounced this correctly. Tessero, I think it is. He's done a lot of voice work. We have Phil Lamar. He did some Jennifer Hale. Different names that you've heard in voice acting via animation, video games, that are just veteran people. It was a really well done series. I really liked it on how just well it handled comic book material. They adapted so many crucial plots, even to how Loki's involvement with the formation of the Avengers coming together. It was really unique how in the first season, the first few episodes, we kind of introduced to each character separately and how they kind of intertwine with one another in a series of events, pull them together through the manipulation of Loki that forms the team, and how they were fighting Hulk, and then he became a member of the team. They dealt with a lot of classic material, handled it in a more modern way, and it was right when Iron Man was coming out, so it was what we later got to know the MCU to be, mixed with classic stories, all at this time when it was all just starting up and the potential that it could have. They dealt with the Kree Skrull War. They handled Secret Invasion. They went through a lot of classic Avengers storylines. We were introduced to you had Ant-Man and the Wasp. You had Hulk. You even had Black Panther. You had the new revamped African American Nick Fury in this book. Just so many characters, and like I said, so many different eras were touched on, um, and just done, extremely well. We got to see some MODOK, AIM. They touched on so much. Wonder Man, the Masters of Evil, just so many classic, pulling from classic Avengers stories. And I've always, and I've said this a lot over the years of doing a podcast, I'm always deeply a deep fan of team books. And I've always, that's where I think Marvel, sometimes more so than DC, has gotten me over the years, because I grew up as a kid with a lot of hand-me-down comics. So a lot of single characters I liked tended to be more DC, like Wonder Woman, Batman. I would read Superman, but we know I'm not the biggest Superman fan. But then when it came to team books, I always felt like Marvel, for me personally, had the edge. I loved the Avengers, especially like, in the 80s. That was when I read the most of it. And like during the mid 80s, and when Hercules was on the Avengers, and later with the West Coast Avengers with Hawkeye and Wonder Man and Scarlet Witch and Vision. I always rocked out with the team books over on Marvel more so than DC, X-Men, X Factor, all those kind of things. So it was cool seeing the dynamics play out in this cartoon, those classic, a lot of, classic storylines from they pulled from all different, from the very beginning of the Avengers history to later, from when I was a kid, like with the 80s, and then the more current stuff. And he did it all with a certain reverence for the source material. They didn't diverge too far off a lot of those original storylines, but just kind of intermingled them together. They even had kind of like the whole New Avengers, how the New Avengers came together, like when the prison, the whole breakout happened, like that was kind of a catalyst. So they borrowed a lot of different things, applied it differently. So even if you had read the comics and knew sort of where they were pulling stuff from, you never felt cheated or it was a rehash. They put a just enough different spin on it that it kept it fresh and kept you, guessing. And you saw so many different characters from the MCU: Baron Zemo, the Enchantress, the Executioner, like I said, Loki, Wonder Man, like I said, AIM, MODOK, Grim Reaper. It was so many. Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, later The Thing. You saw so much. Black Widow, saw so many different people from the Marvel Universe. Doc Samson, Thunderbolt Ross, like all of it, and it was just really handled lovingly. Kang the Conqueror. They had so many great episodes too. It's definitely worth checking out. And I know some of us, not everyone in our, community, as comic fans, like animation. I just love great stories being told. I've never been opposed to, like, I only watch live action or animation is for kids. If certain times, as being a comics fan, I always, for the longest time, let me preface this. For the longest time, for those of you that don't know me well or haven't listened for like a real long time, I talk about this sometimes. I used to draw. If you go to comicbooksavant.com in a gallery, you can see some of my artwork. I got certain sketches from other artists I have, and I have some of my old artwork from when I used to draw. I stopped drawing about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago or so now. But I used to sketch and draw a lot. And as a kid, I wanted to be a cartoonist because I always loved animation, going back to a kid and like Mighty Mouse and Woody Woodpecker, Tom and Jerry. Chuck Jones was a great animator that I loved so much. And I loved his art style. And then it transitioned to, as a kid, reading comics so much. I always wanted to draw for the longest time. I just picked up a pencil and started drawing. I just had a natural gift for it. I found out later my mom was a gifted artist, and she, like me, we both had a passion for it, but never really pursued it, and was, talented with it. And I thought for the longest time as a kid, for a stretch, that I was going to be an animator or something like that. And then I just always had a love for computers, and I kind of went that way instead of drawing. And so I've just always had an affinity for animation, artwork, comic art, specifically animated art. Um, so I was never opposed to watching an animated film, like where some people was like, oh, once you get a certain age, you can't watch and enjoy it. I love Disney animated movies. I love the computer animated stuff, like with Pixar, DreamWorks stuff. A good story to me is a good story. I don't care how you bring it to me, long as it's done well. And this is a perfect example of that being the case. You got these classic characters that we really in cartoon we haven't seen, since or before or since. And handled really well. And like I said, how they adapted and handled the characters, they were all done very true to their comic counterparts, and that's what I like the most about Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I watched what once Disney took over. I excuse me. I started watching their cartoons, and I felt like they were so watered down, and they weren't nearly as good. And again too, they aged them down to be for all ages. Where this had a little bit of Batman the animated series kind of feel for Avengers, more so than all ages, kid friendly. I felt like this cartoon was more for adults than it was for kids, to be honest, and I didn't mind that. And it worked because, like I said, it did a good job adapting the source material to the fullest. If I remember correctly, let me look this up so I give you the right information. Let me see. I want to say both seasons were about 25 episodes. Let me just double check. I want to be accurate on that. I should have had already had that written down, but I had everything else written down about the seasons, but not that. Let's see. So I think about 20. Yes, so I think each season was about 25 episodes per season. So you got a lot of story, and it was crazy enough and they covered so much of the history of the Avengers. They covered a huge gambit of it, and it still left kind of like on a huge cliffhanger. They still had so much more that they could have done. Like I said, it was abrupt how it actually was handled towards the end, because it was abruptly ended because of the circumstances of Disney acquiring them. But they had way more story to tell when it ended. So let me just make sure. So season 1, so season 1 was actually 26 episodes, and both were 26 episodes. So you have what was that 52 episodes of content. And I mean, when I say they do Operation Galactic Storm, they do things with the new Avengers. I'm just going through like some of the titles and storylines. Like I said, they did Secret Avengers. They covered Hank Pym going from going through his like mental crisis from being Ant-Man to Yellow Jacket. They did the whole Prison 42 and the Negative Zone. They did the introduction of Vision. They introduced Beta Ray Bill. Introduced you to the Red Hulk, Secret Invasion, Korvac. Doctor Doom was, implemented in it. They had, Asgard and Loki's attack, like I said, from the original like origin story. All they covered Ultron, Hydra, Kang, um, Masters of Evil, Black Panther, his introduction. They just covered so much rich stuff. And the animation, the funny thing is, when I went back to watch it, I didn't mind the animation at the time when the cartoon came out. But I guess now I've gotten kind of jaded because I've seen so much other animation and more computer generated animation. So going back to see the hand drawn animation, it was like jarring like the first episode or two. And then I fell right back into it. And I think it's beautiful artwork. It's like pretty much Justice League S a little bit, if you like the old Justice League, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, it's kind of like mimics that style. I don't know the company that did the animation for this. I'm trying to look here. I have it up on IMDb. I'm just trying to see. Yeah, so this actually did air on Disney XD. That's what I thought it was. Other companies. The production was Marvel Animation, of course. Noxo Enterprise and Lodo Animation. I don't know what other stuff, but it was a style that very much was like us, a little bit more advanced style from what we had seen like with the Justice League. But I'm looking now at both of the companies that were listed here in the credits. We saw they were like two different companies, like I said, Lodo Animation as well as Noxon Enterprise, and they worked on other stuff like Teen Titans, the original Teen Titans, Young Justice as well, the Boondocks. So you had seen their animation before, and then they later worked on Avengers Assemble, which is the newer Avengers series that they did from Disney later. They did Batman Bold and the Brave, and then with Noxon Enterprise, they did Wolverine and the X-Men. That was the other main series they did. So you definitely see, if you are familiar with those art styles, you get that here with Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. So the animation is not bad at all. Like I said, it was just jarring because I hadn't watched you see so little, even on TV now, you don't see as much hand-drawn animation as you used to. So it did take a slight adjustment, but it's like such great storytelling and animation that they did. So you really can't go wrong. I binged it off and on over maybe like a 2-week period, like in between doing other stuff. I would have it up on the computer as I was like editing, episodes and stuff like that, or doing research for episodes or reading. I would have it going on in the background as, like a secondary thing. And I blew through the 2 seasons relatively quicker than what I thought I would, because I just forgot how really good and fun the series was. It makes me miss it, and I probably start watching the newer stuff to see. I know when I first start watching it, I guess I was like kind of butthurt that they ended this in favor of that, because even the animation style changed, and I had gotten so used to that look that I wanted to keep it in that level of storytelling. But as a fan, certain times you have to adjust to change. You can't be so beholden to it, because sometimes change is for the better, sometimes it's for the worse. But like I said, full coverage of, just like I said, the huge tapestry of the Avengers history in this one, like I said, what is it, 52 episode run. But that's all I could say. I was like, if I had to rate this on a 10-point scale, I would give it, I would think, reviewing it, not seeing it in so many years, I would give it about an 8.25 out of 10. This is something definitely, I don't know if I would now going back and rewatching it, no, I can get to it on streaming. I don't know if I need to add it to my collection at this point. Like, that's reserved for very specific things. Like if I'm gonna buy it, when I collect everything digitally. I don't know how much now after going back to rewatch it. How would I watch it again or again? Like where maybe something like thinking about things, animated shows like Avatar. I own all of the Avatar series, Avatar, um, the original Avatar series and Legend of Korra. Both, I love that world. I own all of that. I think like Cowboy Bebop. I own all of that. I'm waiting for like the Justice League. I want to get the Batman animated series and maybe like Batman Beyond each year. DC like during San Diego Comic-Con will announce a new remastered of some of their old classic cartoons. They did Batman animated series. Then last year at San Diego, they'll announce it in July at San Diego Comic-Con, and then they normally drop in October. So far they've done Batman animated series, Batman Beyond. I'm hoping it maybe we'll get Superman this summer. They'll announce that, or maybe the Justice League, and I will be all over that, because if you don't know, I love the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. I reviewed them when they came out. I went back a few years after it ended, and because I had back on Blu-ray DVD, because part of the set came out in DVD, the other half was in Blu-ray. But I went back and watched that whole series from the first episode to the last, and I reviewed each episode again over, I don't know how many months it took me, but if you go back and look and search, I did a revisit of it, and I would love to do it again now that it's been so many years since that originally aired, because I love that. That's probably one of my favorite all-time animated series is Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. But yeah, I thought this was definitely fun. If you've never watched Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, definitely check it out if you have Disney Plus. It doesn't cost you anything. It's already included in your subscription. And they have some other, they have a ton of older, cartoons listed there as well under the Marvel heading. That is worth checking out. And I will probably do, as I watch through them, I will do similar like spotlights just to bring them to your attention if you're not familiar with them. To maybe I'll turn you on to something that you could really enjoy. Because like I said, this was a fun series. If you like the Avengers and like just the the MCU and the vibe of it, this is something worth checking out. Like I said, that you can, you don't have to binge it all in one sitting. It's on the service. It's not going anywhere. You can take your time and work your way through the 52 episodes. But I guarantee you, once you start watching, you'll get pulled in. So you'll watch 2 or 3, 4 episodes in a sitting, just because the storylines are so engaging and the storytelling is done so well that it'll suck you right into it all. But that's all I really have to talk to you guys about in this episode. I just thought it would be neat to touch back up on just like different aspects, not everything that's the new hotness that's coming out, but then revisit some things from the past that were really done well that might not be on your radar, that I can help bring on your radar. And like I said, maybe open you up to trying something different that you might really enjoy. As always, you guys, you can follow me on social media at Comic Book Savant on Twitter as well as Instagram. We also have the Facebook group, which is the Savant Society. You can find it at facebook.com/groups/the Savant Society, all one word. You request to join, I'll add you to the group as soon as I see your request, and then you can just come in and join into the great conversation, comic book related conversations that we have, and we just shoot the breeze and get to know one another and talk all about comics. We kind of keep it spoiler free, and we like recommend books and just talk about like events and upcoming books and who's interested in them, and people make recommendations after they read something good. It's just a really good, wholesome like environment that we just have fun getting to know each other. So if you haven't already, check it out. If you can and you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, your support is needed even more so than ever now, just because of changes behind the scenes that's going on with different sponsors and so forth. Your help is needed even more so now going into this new year. I have links to patreon.com/comic book savant. I have different tiers. For little as $1 a month, you get access to the Patreon only feed. So you get a whole nother 4 episodes a month. So instead of getting 4 episodes, you get 8. Certain times you get more than that on the feed. And it's different tiers, and you have access to even more bonus content over on Patreon. So definitely, if you're interested in helping the show, you can look into that, and you can get something back for your investment in me. You get extra bonus content and other goodies as well. So definitely check that out. But that's all I have for you guys for this week. I'm your host, James Harris. This is the Comic Book Savant. And as always, you guys have a good week, and I'll talk to you soon. Until then, take care.